When fame meets nature's fury, even the brightest stars can't escape fate's bite. From circus arenas to exotic safaris, some celebrities met their shocking ends not through scandal or misfortune, but by the claws, fangs, and horns of wild beasts. Here are the most horrifying celebrity deaths caused by animals. In the summer of 1994, Honolulu wasn't exactly expecting an elephant stampede through its streets, but that is exactly what happened when Tyke, a 20-year-old African elephant, decided she had enough of the circus life. Tyke was not just another animal in the show. She was the main act, a 4-ton star who had spent most of her life performing tricks for applause and peanuts. But years of training, constant travel, and endless performances had turned that star into a ticking time bomb. And on August 20th, during a circus performance at the Neil S. Bladel Center, the bomb finally went off. The crowd had gathered for an evening of acrobatics, laughter, and exotic animals, the usual family circus scene. But as Tyke entered the ring with her trainer, Alan Campbell, things took a sharp turn. Witnesses recalled her looking restless, even agitated, as if she sensed something was off. Within moments, chaos erupted. Tyke suddenly attacked Campbell, tossing him like a rag doll before fatally crushing him. The audience, frozen in disbelief, erupted into screams as another handler, Dallas Beckwith, rushed in to help, only to be severely injured himself. In a matter of seconds, the joyful circus turned into a scene of pure horror, with families running for their lives and children crying as Tyke broke free from the arena. What followed next could have been straight out of an action movie, if it were not so devastatingly real. Tyke charged through the streets of downtown Honolulu, her massive frame thundering down the pavement as cars swerved and bystanders scattered. Witnesses described her as confused, terrified, and unstoppable. Police cars surrounded her, sirens blaring, as the city tried to contain the mayhem. It took nearly 90 bullets to finally bring Tyke down after a 30-minute rampage that left a trail of chaos, blood, and heartbreak. The sight of her massive body collapsing onto the hot pavement marked one of the most haunting endings in the history of animal entertainment. The footage of the event spread quickly, first through local news, then across the world. People were horrified not just by the rampage, but by the realization of what drove it. Tyke's attack was not random. It was the result of years of suffering under harsh training methods, isolation, and unnatural captivity. Reports later revealed that she had shown aggression before, even injuring trainers in earlier performances, but those warnings were ignored in favor of profit and spectacle. Her death, caught on camera and replayed countless times, became a symbol of everything wrong with the use of wild animals for entertainment. In the aftermath, public outrage exploded. Protesters demanded justice for Tyke, arguing that her rampage was a desperate act of self-defense, a cry for freedom. Lawsuits followed, and animal rights groups like PETA and the Humane Society used the incident to push for bans on wild animal performances. Over time, their efforts began to pay off. Hawaii eventually became one of the first states to restrict the use of exotic animals in circuses, and many other countries soon followed suit. Tyke's story was later turned into the emotional documentary Tyke Elephant Outlaw, which reignited conversations about how humans treat the animals we claim to love. Today, Tyke's name still echoes through the animal rights movement, a tragic reminder of how even the most powerful creatures can be broken by human cruelty. Her story is not just about one elephant's rampage, it is about what happens when we forget that animals feel fear, pain, and anger too. In the end, Tyke did not die as a monster. She died as a victim of a world that caged her for entertainment. And though her rampage shook Honolulu to its core, it also sparked something bigger, a long overdue wake-up call that maybe, just maybe, the circus should leave the wild out of its spotlight. Jean Batten was not just a pilot. She was a force of nature wrapped in silk scarves and determination. Born in 1909 in New Zealand, she grew up with her head quite literally in the clouds, not out of whimsy, but out of ambition. While most young women of her time were expected to follow predictable paths, Jean had her eyes set on the skies. Her mother, a fierce supporter of her dreams, encouraged her to take flight. figuratively and literally. And once Jean took to the air, she never looked back. By the 1930s, aviation was still an uncertain science and an even riskier career for anyone, let alone a woman. But Jean Batten was not one for limits. She trained hard, flew harder, and quickly made a name for herself as one of the boldest aviators of her era. Her solo flights between continents turned her into an international sensation. She broke record after record, flying from England to Australia and later from England to New Zealand, feats that were considered impossible at the time. The media adored her elegance and dubbed her the Garbo of the skies for her mysterious beauty and quiet confidence. Beneath that calm exterior, though, was a steely determination that pushed her to the edge of endurance. Each flight was a dance with danger. She battled storms, mechanical failures, exhaustion, and isolation in her tiny single-engine plane, often navigating by sheer instinct and grit. But every landing brought roaring applause and newspaper headlines. Jean became a symbol of courage and possibility, especially for women who dreamed of breaking boundaries. She did not just fly, she soared past every expectation society placed before her. Yet, for all her fame and accomplishment, Jean's later life took a quietly tragic turn. As the golden age of aviation faded and the world's attention shifted elsewhere, she gradually retreated from the public eye. The fearless pilot who once conquered skies became a reclusive figure, living in solitude on the island of Majorca in Spain. Her glamorous adventures were replaced by quiet days and fading memories of applause. Still proud and independent, she kept to herself, wary of modern medicine and reluctant to rely on anyone. In 1982, an incident that seemed minor at first would lead to her untimely end. While staying in a small town, she was bitten by a dog. It was not a dramatic wild animal attack or a daring accident, just an ordinary bite that most people would have brushed off. But Jean, true to her stubborn spirit, refused medical treatment and antibiotics. Infection slowly set in, leading to sepsis and a pulmonary abscess. The woman, who had survived countless life-threatening flights, succumbed quietly and painfully to a simple wound. Even more tragically, her death went unnoticed for years. She had no close family nearby, no journalists following her story, no admirers left to wonder where she had gone. Her body was not identified until 1987, 5 years later, when a journalist finally traced her mysterious disappearance. The revelation shocked the world, as the aviation icon who once conquered the skies had died in anonymity, far from the spotlight she once commanded. Jean Batten's story is a haunting reminder that greatness and fragility often share the same wings. She lived boldly, chased horizons few dared to reach, and proved that courage can defy gravity. Yet her quiet, lonely death showed that even legends can fade into silence. Still, her legacy remains unshaken. The girl from New Zealand who looked at the sky and decided to make it her home, forever immortalized as one of aviation's brightest and most tragic stars. José Paquirri Rodriguez Ramirez wasn't just another matador. He was Spain's golden boy of the bull ring, a living legend who could make a crowd hold its breath with one flick of his red cape. Born in 1948 in Barbate, Andalusia, Paquirri seemed destined for the arena from the start. He had that daring charm, that unmistakable confidence that only true toreros carried, and a reputation for keeping his cool even when facing a 1-ton snorting beast with nothing but a sword and sheer willpower. For years, he ruled the sands of Spain's most famous bull rings, turning each performance into something that felt less like sport and more like art, dangerous, bloody, beautiful art. But on September 26, 1984, in Pozo Blanco, that art turned deadly. The crowd had come for the thrill, the elegance, the spectacle of man versus bull. They got all of that, and the tragedy that would change bullfighting forever. That afternoon, Paquirri faced a bull named Avispado, a massive creature with muscle, fury, and no interest in showmanship. Everything seemed routine at first. The crowd roared, the music blared, and Paquirri danced with danger the way he always did, graceful, fearless, magnetic. But in the blink of an eye, the rhythm broke. Avispado charged unexpectedly, hooking its horn into Paquirri's thigh and tossing him brutally into the air. Gasps echoed across the arena as the bullfighter hit the ground, clutching his leg. He had been gored deeply. The horn had torn through his femoral artery, one of the body's major lifelines. Yet, even in that horrific moment, Paquirri stayed composed. As medics rushed to his side, witnesses recalled him calmly giving instructions, telling them what to do, how to stop the bleeding, as though he was more concerned with helping them help him than with his own pain. That is the kind of poise that made him legendary, and tragically, it would be the last anyone saw of his unmatched courage in the ring. The medical staff did what they could, but the facilities in Pozo Blanco were far from equipped for such a catastrophic injury. There was no proper trauma center, no vascular surgeon on standby, and precious minutes slipped away as they scrambled to move him. Despite the chaos, Paquirri remained conscious, even talking to the ambulance crew during the transfer. His strength was unreal, but nature was cruelly indifferent that day. He bled out before reaching a hospital, leaving Spain reeling from the loss. When news of his death broke, it felt like the nation had lost more than just a bullfighter. They had lost a symbol of bravery, elegance, and national pride. His funeral was broadcast on television, watched by millions who couldn't believe the man who once made bulls bow to his will was gone. His wife, the famous singer Isabel Pantoja, was heartbroken, and their son, Francisco José Rivera, would later follow in his father's footsteps, forever shadowed by his legacy. Paquirri's death wasn't just a tragedy, it became a turning point. The shock and public outrage pushed Spanish authorities to reform bullfighting safety standards, mandating that every bullring must have a fully equipped emergency facility with surgeons capable of handling severe injuries. In a way, Paquirri's final fight saved future matadors' lives, turning his death into a catalyst for change. But beyond the reforms and tributes, his story remains one of unshakable composure in the face of death. A man who, even when fatally wounded, refused to surrender his dignity. Today, decades later, his name still carries a sense of awe. You cannot talk about bullfighting without mentioning Paquirri, the matador who defined courage, captivated a country, and met his fate doing exactly what he loved most. It is tragic, yes, but also profoundly human. A story of passion, peril, and the kind of heroism that does not fade with time. In the glitzy neon jungle of Las Vegas, where tigers were as common on stage as Elvis impersonators, few names roared louder than Siegfried and Roy. These two German-born illusionists were the kings of the strip, dazzling audiences with a blend of magic mystery and majestic white tigers that looked like they stepped out of a snow globe. Their show wasn't just popular, it was legendary, pulling in millions of dollars and turning exotic animal acts into high art. That is until October 3rd, 2003, when one of their beloved stars decided it was time for a little unscripted drama. That night, the Mirage Hotel was packed with fans, eager to see the duo's signature mix of glam and growl. Roy Horn, ever the showman, strutted out with Montecore, a 7-year-old white tiger who weighed as much as a small car and had a gaze that could make your soul tap out. The act was rolling smoothly, lights flashing, music pounding Vegas perfection. Then, out of nowhere, everything went sideways faster than you can say abracadabra. Montecore suddenly clamped his jaws around Roy's neck and dragged him off stage like a chew toy. The audience, thinking it was all part of the show, applauded until they realized the magic trick didn't have a safe word. Chaos erupted as crew members rushed in, swinging fire extinguishers and shouting commands, while the tiger refused to let go. It was pure pandemonium, and the illusion of control shattered in an instant. Roy miraculously didn't die on the spot, but the damage was catastrophic. He suffered severe neck injuries, massive blood loss, and later a stroke that left him partially paralyzed and with lasting brain damage. His partner, Siegfried Fischbacher, was devastated. The show was shut down immediately, and Siegfried and Roy at the Mirage went from a Vegas institution to a tragic legend overnight. Roy spent months in recovery, defying medical odds just to talk and and walk again. When he eventually appeared in public years later, he was still smiling because that's the kind of man who brings a tiger on stage and calls it love. Now you'd think being bitten by a 400-pound predator would make Roy furious, but nope, he defended Manticore until the end. He insisted the tiger hadn't attacked him out of aggression, but had actually saved him after he suffered a stroke mid-performance. According to Roy, Manticore sensed something was wrong and tried to drag him to safety like a furry paramedic. Animal behaviorists, however, weren't entirely buying that story. Some claimed the tiger reacted to confusion or an unintentional cue, while others thought it was simply a reminder that wild animals, no matter how trained, don't do scripts. Still, Roy's love for his animals never wavered. He even continued to visit and care for Manticore, who lived until 2014. The incident didn't just end one of Vegas's biggest acts, it also sparked global conversations about animal welfare, entertainment ethics, and the limits of human control. The Mirage eventually replaced its iconic Tiger show with Cirque du Soleil trading clause for contortionists. But even after the curtain fell, Siegfried and Roy remained inseparable. They lived quietly together in Las Vegas, surrounded by their beloved animals and memories of their once magical empire. Roy passed away in May 2020, not from a tiger's teeth, but from complications related to COVID-19. Siegfried followed a year later, closing the final act on one of showbiz's most extraordinary partnerships. Their story remains both enchanting and eerie, a reminder that when you dance with tigers, you're not just playing with magic, you're gambling with nature itself. And in Vegas, if the house always wins, sometimes the tiger does too. Jacques Boxberger was the kind of man who made running look like poetry. Born in France in 1949, he was a celebrated middle-distance runner who represented his country in 4 Olympic Games. For decades, he lived in the rhythm of stadium cheers, record-breaking sprints, and the thrill of competition. After retiring from athletics, he traded running tracks for the open plains of Africa, not to chase medals this time, but to chase memories. In 2001, during a family safari in Kenya, that pursuit turned tragically fatal when an elephant, one of the most majestic creatures on Earth, turned into an unexpected force of destruction. The story sounds almost unreal, like something out of a wildlife documentary that takes a horrifying turn. Boxberger was filming elephants in the wild, mesmerized by their sheer presence. Elephants are often seen as gentle giants, intelligent and emotional animals that symbolize calm strength. But nature has its own rules, and sometimes it reminds us that wild animals, no matter how peaceful they appear, are still wild. As Boxberger focused his camera, one elephant reportedly became agitated, perhaps feeling threatened or protective. In a sudden, violent shift from serenity to chaos, the elephant charged. Within seconds, it had lifted Boxberger with its trunk, slammed him to the ground, and trampled him to death before anyone could react. His wife and daughter, watching helplessly, were left in shock. Their dream vacation turned into a nightmare. For someone who had faced the pressure of Olympic finals, this was the last challenge anyone could imagine. The contrast was cruel. A man who had dedicated his life to discipline and control, undone by a creature whose power is purely instinctive. It was the kind of tragedy that shook both the sports world and the public, a reminder that no amount of fame or fitness can shield a person from nature's unpredictability. French newspapers mourned him as a national hero, gone too soon and in such an extraordinary way. Friends described him as a man full of energy, always eager to explore new horizons. That spirit, the same curiosity that led him across finish lines and continents, was what brought him to Kenya, and, heartbreakingly, what placed him too close to danger. What made the incident even more haunting was its irony. Boxberger had spent years studying the limits of human endurance, running until his lungs burned, muscles screamed, and crowds roared. Yet his final moments were beyond any contest, beyond any preparation. There is something deeply humbling about that. The idea that even someone who has conquered physical extremes can still be at the mercy of the natural world. His death was not the result of recklessness or foolishness, but of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, in front of a creature powerful enough to change the course of a life in an instant. In the aftermath, tributes poured in from athletes and fans alike. They remembered not the gruesome way he died, but the graceful way he lived. A man who ran with purpose and carried the quiet confidence of someone who loved the challenge more than the victory. His story now serves as both inspiration and caution, a reminder to admire the wild but never underestimate it. Nature, beautiful as it is, operates on instinct and not emotion, and sometimes the line between wonder and danger is thinner than we think. Jacques Boxberger's legacy endures, not just as a runner who represented France on the grandest stages, but as a symbol of how unpredictable life can be. His death in the African savannah remains one of those stories that feels surreal, a tragic meeting of human curiosity and natural might. In a way, he left this world doing what he loved, exploring, observing, and trying to capture life's beauty. But the wild, as he discovered in his final moments, has a beauty that does not always want to be captured.